Hello and welcome again to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast where we talk about films off. You know, I just realized I should have put this in the opening and then I wouldn't have had to say it every time.
Yeah, you should just have like a clean pre-recorded version of this.
Yeah, or just like a specifically bad recorded version of it.
Yeah, maybe this one.
Yeah, maybe this one. This is the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast where we talk about movies off of the Rotten Tomatoes 200 Best Horror Movies of All Time list. My name is Clay, and with me as always is Amanda. How are you doing, Amanda?
I am okay. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad that you made it here. You clearly got your invitation. I wish they said it that way every time they said the word invitation, especially with the branding that those guys were doing with that cult. You seem like you need to have like a more rhythm to say it. It's about going to Mexico and getting the invitation.
I feel like it would be more of a, it's about going to Mexico and getting the invitation.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of them is more welcoming. Yes. And one of them is a little bit more, exciting. So I guess it depends on the flavor of what your cult is going to be.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you're doing it in LA, you want it to be as close to Yoga Voice as it possibly can be.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
So we are covering The Invitation.
If you hadn't guessed.
From 2015. This is number 117 on our list with an 89% Rotten Tomatoes score. Amanda, had you seen this before?
I had, and I had somehow forgotten it.
Oh, really?
I don't know, and I liked it. I enjoyed it, but I somehow had wholesale forgotten it. I think I'd even kind of forgotten that I'd seen it, and then I sat down to watch it and was like, "Oh yeah, I like this movie."
Well, that's good.
Yeah, ringing endorsement.
Yeah, this I don't remember how I came across this. It was definitely like a word of mouth thing, and this is one of those movies that falls in the realm of like a Starry Eyes for me, where I saw somebody else talk about it and said, "Don't look anything up about it, just watch it."
Yeah. I think I had maybe not quite the same experience, but it was definitely I read something about it, like if you're gonna watch one indie horror movie this year, make sure it's this one. And then I think I just was home alone one night, baking cookies or some bullshit, and I put it on and was sort of half watching it,
aerating a bottle of wine.
Yes.
Yeah, this
in front of my extremely beige living room. Yes.
Much like Starry Eyes, this was a movie that lived on Netflix and just kept popping up in my recommendations for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then I finally watched it, and I did not regret it because I enjoyed it quite a bit. Spoilers.
You accepted Netflix's invitation.
I accepted the invitation to watch The Invitation. We're going to
get really annoying.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about the movie The Invitation.
This thing is so official.
Maybe they're overcompensating. It's kind of hard to call everybody up out of the blue after 2 years.
I'm so glad you're here. We've got a lot to talk about. So much to celebrate tonight. Each and every one of us is on a journey, and we feel that it's important to be on that journey with the people you love. Everybody, this is my friend Pruitt.
Bars on the windows and
Security. Safer.
You've been acting so suspicious of our hospitality.
Well,
Jesus.
has he been like this a lot? So agitated? How has he been handling things? He can be self-destructive. I think he's doing the best he can.
something doesn't feel safe here. We don't see you for 2 years, and then all of a sudden, we get invited to this lavish dinner. Don't tell me that this is normal.
What do you think is happening, Will?
This beautiful moment is upon us. Tonight is the night our faith is made real.
What is happening? There's nothing to be afraid of.
All right. The Invitation. Direct. I'm going to do it every time if I can remember to do it.
You are going to make yourself sick of it.
That's the plan. Everything I do, that's my end goal. Is I do it till I get sick of it. Directed by Karen Kusama, director of Jennifer's Body. This is actually, this was the next movie she did after Jennifer's Body, but there was a 7-year gap in between.
Oh,
them.
wow.
Yeah, I don't know if she was in director's jail because of Jennifer's Body, which is
unfortunate
and unfair. But
boo, Hollywood, boo.
Written by Phil Hay and Matt Manfredi, sure. Starring Logan Marshall-Green. Starring Logan Marshall-Green. Starring Logan Marshall-Green as not Tom Hardy. He looks exactly like Tom Hardy.
Yes.
Michiel Huisman, Tammy Blanchard, Big Mike from Reno 911, and the Zodiac Killer himself.
Yes.
Amanda, what happens in The Invitation?
While attending a dinner party at his former house, a man starts to believe that his ex-wife and her new husband have sinister plans for the guests.
Yes. That's a really interesting one because I feel like you could go incredibly bland with the description of this and not be wrong.
Yep.
And you could go more over the top with the description of this and not be wrong.
Yeah, I feel like that summary was actually pretty tonally down the middle.
Yeah.
Because you definitely could be like, crazy cult couple kills everyone. I was going for another.
I know. Yeah,
Damn it.
Missed it.
Damn it. Sorry.
All the Karen Kusama movies deserve those Gene Shalit things.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's a pretty good one. It is tonally pretty
kills
correct.
Comrades. It was right there.
Yeah, it kills comrades. Do you want to do the full thing?
No,
you
ruined
the mustache
it now.
on and everything.
I know.
We were going to do some things you might find, but honestly, it's more accurate to do party fouls because there's a lot of party fouls in this movie, such as red wine that goes right to your head and shuts down your cardiovascular system. Bringing a new guy, quote, to the party who creeps everybody out.
Yep.
When someone says they want to show everyone a video, I know your husband felt personally attacked when I said that.
Yes.
But it's something everybody has done. I've done it. You get to that point where it's like, I got to show you this thing on YouTube. And everybody stays, but inside they're going, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I've done it.
Yeah, you'll get there. And I didn't write this one down, but I think it applies. You can push back if not. Questionable parenting.
I'm going to push back on that one.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't see it.
He should have been there. Shouldn't have let that kid have the bat.
Oh, Clay.
The kid saw them in the tub, and that drove him to tell the other kid. And then the kid was like, "Get the fuck out of here!" And he whacked him in the head with the bat and he killed him.
I don't think that's what the movie says.
Lock your bedroom door so you don't scar your child for life, which leads to his direct death. Case closed.
Don't let your kids play baseball.
Or that.
Baseball's the most dangerous sport.
That's true.
It's not true.
No, it's not.
No.
So yeah, this was Karen Kusama's first movie since Jennifer's Body. This was largely, I think it was completely. There was no studio interference. This was not like a major studio movie.
Oh wow!
So they basically got free reign to make the movie they wanted to make.
Yeah.
And I'm very glad that they did. Because this is atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the perfect movie for a lot of the stuff you and I have talked about up to this point, as far as, exposition and characters and stuff, because you get so much out of so little in this.
Definitely.
The exposition level is very, very low. And everything about the setup is relatably uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Seeing old friends after a long time. And there's, when one of them has just come back from some sort of questionable absence.
Well, and when like the people in the friend group have gotten divorced.
Right.
But they're both still in the friend group.
Yep.
Like, I wonder if part of why this movie works for us is because we are very much at the age that a lot of these party goers are at, where it's like some people in our group of friends are married and have kids. Some people in our group of friends are just married. Some people are dating. Some people are single. But like we've all known each other long enough that like if somebody moves away and moves to California for a couple years and then they come back, it's like you partially want to go back to the old way that things were, but it is different when it's like, oh man, I haven't seen you in so long.
Yeah.
COVID probably adds to that feeling.
Especially if the thing that's stopped you from seeing everybody is a traumatic event like the death of a child or something.
Yeah. Your child that everybody here clearly knew.
And I think they were all there when it happened too.
I think at least a bunch of them were, yeah.
That's going to put a damper on things.
Just a little.
Being at a party full of old friends.
Yes.
And then someone's friend shows up that nobody knows, who's a little bit weird.
Yeah, and that happens twice in this movie.
Yeah, there's one who's already there.
Yes.
And then one who shows up. And it's like having been there, it's always awkward. You try not to make it awkward, but it always ends up being awkward.
Yeah, of course. Even if the person who shows up is like actually not a murderer, like it's still weird when it's like, oh yeah, like we've known each other for so long and now I have to talk to this new person who I don't understand. Like there's a scene in this where Will just says to Pruitt, the guy we're talking about, the Zodiac killer.
Yes.
He just says, why are you here?
Yes.
Like he just comes out and says it. Like I don't understand. Why are you here?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess we should say the setup of the invitation is a dinner party of these old friends who have gotten back together after one of them has come back from some sort of soul-searching journey to Mexico. I think she may have tried to kill herself at some point because they have that flashback where she's over the sink.
Yeah, we find that out a little later.
Yeah,
like as the movie kind of gets going.
But clearly, there's been a gap in all of their relationship time because of the death of this couple's son. They got divorced. They've moved on to the point where they're seeing other people.
Right.
So
the wife is remarried.
To
somebody she met at this soul-searching grief group thing. Mm-hmm. And Will, our main character, has a lovely girlfriend who doesn't deserve any of this bullshit.
It's strange to me. Well, first I was going to say that's basically it. It's just that's the setup, and the thing that's great about this movie is that the setup is so relatable that it's easy to get drawn into it. I think anyway.
Yeah.
And the writing is so expertly sparse that they give you just enough exposition to put you in the position where you know the relationships, and then the performances do the rest, and you kind of are allowed to fill those spaces yourself. Yeah,
and draw parallels between relationships you'd had, people you'd known, friend groups you've been in before in the past. Like, it's interesting because I'm usually the one who's like super on top of all the names of all the characters, and this is a bit of an ensemble cast. A lot of people in this, and I did not really pay a ton of attention to the names.
Names don't matter.
Well, especially in a movie like this where it does this amazing job of like giving each character a sort of social position in this friend group that is familiar and like easily understood very quickly by the audience.
Yeah.
And so because you're already kind of familiar with like the position this person is in socially, you don't really need to remember like, is that Tommy or is that Ben?
Right.
It's like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, okay, that's the guy who's here even though his wife is at home with the kids and she's mad at him. That's the guy who's here with his boyfriend.
Right.
Like,
right.
It's much easier to sort of be like, oh, they're the fun party couple, the boyfriends, and then this guy is the guy who like became a parent before everybody else and sort of like has to deal with that baggage.
They even go so far as to I like, this is just a stupid tiny thing, but it always amazes me that they did, or in this case didn't do this. Mm-hmm. One of the I guess it would help to know the names of this section, but
who are you thinking of?
One of the same-sex couple.
It's Miguel and
Miguel. It's Miguel.
Okay.
Miguel seems to be a doctor or works in the medical profession.
Yeah, doctor, nurse, EMT.
They never say it.
Nope. Nope. There's no setup. There's no like clunky dialogue line where it's like, "Oh, busy night in the ER, huh, Miguel?" And he's like, "Oh, you know."
Yeah. All they do is there's a scene where Will, the main guy, finds a bottle of barbiturates or pills that he doesn't know what they are, and he takes one and he shows it to Miguel, who knows what it is.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, he's either a drug dealer or he has some sort of...
He works in pharmaceuticals or he's a surgeon.
And then later on when things the shit starts to hit the fan, he's clearly the one with some sort of medical training.
Yeah, he sort of leaps into action when a character gets injured.
Yeah, I know that there's another version of this movie where everybody has dialogue where they're like, wow, I haven't seen you since you graduated from medical school. What's it like working at the big city hospital, Miguel? Well, the ER is a tough place, but I'm getting really familiar with all the different kinds of pills that they put across my table.
Yeah. See, it's interesting, though, because there's maybe like one moment in this movie that gets close to that, but it's played very... It's played in a way that makes sense for the situation the characters find themselves in. It's when the blonde woman Claire is taught. They're like she and Will are sitting on the stairs, and she says to Will, "Ask me a question." And he's like, "Oh yeah, sure. Hi, how are you?" And she was like, "No, really, ask me a question." He was like, "Okay, yeah, you're up for tenure, right?"
Oh sure.
And she's like, "Yeah, I got it." And he's like, "Oh, that's great." She's like, "A year and a half ago." And he's like, I'm sorry. And it's like she kind of does it on purpose to show like we used to be super close and you dropped off the face of the earth and you don't even know what's going on in my life anymore.
Yeah.
But it's not played. It's like a character building moment that tells you something about their relationship. It's not exposition. It doesn't matter that she got tenure. We never learn like what subject matter she teaches and where she does it. It's just like it's used as proof to kind of show how far relations in this group have deteriorated.
Right. Yeah. And there's lots of like great stuff like that where like later on, the girl who drinks the stuff and dies, Gina, I think pulls either Will aside or Dawn. Is that her name? The main girl? Not Dawn. The woman whose house it is.
The wife? Yes. The ex-wife?
Yeah.
Eden.
I knew it was one of those names. Gina pulls one of them aside and apologizes for not reaching out after everything happened.
Yes.
I have been that person.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh man, that feels too real to me.
Yeah. But
it's like, it's an identifiable, relatable thing where it's like, yeah, you're in kind of a weird position. You don't know how to react. So things just kind of drift.
Yeah, and again, I don't mean to harp on this too much. I know there's a lot of other things to talk about with this movie, but it's such a great, like, it's such a great story about a group of friends who we never really hear about how they all meet.
Right.
It's kind of implied that it might be like college.
Yep.
You know, like they seem... They're all old enough at this point that they've been out of school for several years.
I didn't want to look and see how old everybody was because I was like, there's a good chance I might be older than these people at this point.
Yeah, maybe.
I couldn't tell if it's like, are they like early 40s or are they like mid 30s?
I think they're like mid 30s. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. The vibe I got was very much like these were people who used to see each other all the time because they would hang out together. They probably were different combinations of roommates. They maybe went to school together. There was like situations where like it is when you're in high school and college where you're just kind of like with your friends all the time because you go to school with your friends or you live with your friends or... You know what I mean? You just have this like built-in social system. And then as you start getting older and people couple off and they settle down, they have families, they buy houses, everything starts to kind of spread out.
Right.
And then, yeah, you get these situations where it's like, how have we not seen each other in this long? Or, yeah, something horrible happened to you and I wasn't a good friend. I didn't follow up. And then we sort of lost touch. Like enough time. They're old enough. They're all old enough that they've started to experience that.
Right.
Which I think is like a very universal, or, you know, maybe not universal, but a very common experience that a lot of people have where like you leave college and you lose a bunch of friends.
Yeah. Local Martian Green is, he was 39 when he made this movie.
Oh, there you go.
I guess late 30s. So
Yeah.
got a couple years left.
I was gonna say you got a couple years left before your expiration date.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the reason that works so well, or I should say, all of that stuff. I think the reason the rest of the movie works so well when it starts to. All right, let me rephrase this. This movie is a movie about a bunch of friends at a dinner party.
Yes.
But this is also a horror movie.
Yes.
And the more unsettling horror elements, I think, work so well because that uncomfortableness is bolstered by the fact that the relationships are so believable.
Yeah.
So when the weird guy shows up, or when they pull out the laptop and they're like, we want to tell you about the cult we're in.
Yeah.
Everybody is believable enough that you can kind of sense them all shift.
Yep.
And they'll just kind of like start shooting looks at each other. And
Yes.
it's like, it's believable of a group of friends who are
who've
very
known
close.
each other for a really long time. And
Yeah.
you can kind of slip back into that familiar discourse or like the nonverbal communication of like, like I feel like you and I have known each other long enough that if we were out somewhere and somebody started doing or saying something really obnoxious or whatever, like I could probably make eye contact with you across the room and you'd be like, oh, Amanda's so pissed. Haha. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't need to like wave a big semaphore flag of being like, this is annoying, right? Like we'd both just be like,
either that or it would go right over my head and I would just like smile and wave and like point.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But yeah, this friend group clearly has the writing is so good in this movie because it gives the structure of like these people have enough background with one another that we don't need to have the details explained of like, well, that Tommy and Ben were roommates for 4 years at UCLA right. And then they lived in Silver Lake together in an apartment. And then when Tommy met his girl, his now wife, like she was a bitch and she pulled him away from the friend group and then they had kids and we never see him anymore, but now he's here and his wife is mad. Like you don't get this whole background about how everybody feels about Tommy's wife who's home with the kids.
Yeah.
Like it's,
The other thing that's so amazing about it to me, well, I don't know, amazing's too big of a word, but it's just impressive
Clay's
to me.
favorite movie, The Invitation.
The Invitation. Well, one of the things I really appreciate is they don't do that thing that so many movies do, and I always find it like super cringy and it barely ever works.
Yeah.
When two people who are supposed to have known each other for a long time reminisce about an event and talk about it in a way that the audience doesn't know what they're talking about, but they like laugh hysterically about it.
Right.
That stuff always rings super false. Or
when it's like one of them would just be like, well, like that night in Cabo.
Yeah.
And
or like,
remember, oh, you're so bad.
Yeah. Remember what you two did, blah, blah, blah. It's like that stuff. I feel like it never works.
Yeah.
And they managed to not do it in this.
Right.
Unless I'm forgetting it. They just let all of these relationships and the situation that they're in work organically.
Yes.
And just be of the moment that it's happening.
Yeah.
And they don't just keep throwing you this crap to try and, paint the cabinet shut with exposition about how they're friends. They know each other. They haven't talked to each other in a long time.
Yeah.
Nobody at the beginning says, man, it's been a long time. I haven't seen you since your kid died. It's
yeah. Like they might say things that edge around that, but like it definitely not.
Sorry. One of the other thing, like they do this other thing, or they don't do that I fucking hate, is when someone pulls someone aside and goes like, "It's been so long since it happened."
Yes.
I fucking hate that.
Yeah,
stuff.
and we're gonna allude to the tragedy.
Yeah, and
the accident.
They don't talk about it that way. Like everybody knows it happened. Everybody knows the history between these two, but nobody's
like
talking about
there's
it.
a couple.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
There's a
very excited.
yeah.
About that. It was not an invitation to cut you off. I apologize.
Like, yeah, there's a couple moments where somebody will definitely say to Will, like, well, yeah, I mean, of course it's hard. Like, of course it feels weird for you to be back here.
Right.
Like, a lot of horrible shit happened here and you haven't been back here in a really long time. Of course it's weird and hard. Like, you need to, like, let some of that feeling go. You need to relax and understand that, like, we're here, we're now, let's just have a nice night.
Right.
Like, nobody's like, Will, are you okay? Are you having are you having a hard time with the memories
right.
of your son
right.
in the house? Like, no one's doing that. And like, not only do these writing choices that we're talking about here and these story choices make it like a more enjoyable movie to watch that feels better paced and isn't like taking you out because of clunky dialogue. Like, it feels like you are just sitting in watching real people.
Right.
Like,
right.
I think that also is bolstered by the fact that, like, while some of these actors are familiar faces, none of them are like A-list huge stars. Like, Tom Cruise is not in this movie.
Right. Well, in one case, familiar, but because you think it's somebody else.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not. He looks like him, but it's not him.
No. And
but I know what you
mean.
I know
there's definitely like, you know, the guy who plays David was Dario in Game of Thrones. So like, I'm not trying to say that these people are like nobodies, but I do think like I think I read somewhere that like for a while they were imagining that this would be cast with like Zachary Quinto and like like big name people. And I think part of what makes this movie work for me is that these are like attractive LA people, but they're not like, there's you know, Zachary Quinto and Emily Blunt aren't the main couple who are the cult couple, and Tom Hardy's not Will. And do you know what I mean? I feel like if it was all these big, like star-studded names, it would just be, you just can't help but think like, oh, this is a movie. This is a movie. This is a movie. This is a movie.
Right.
Whereas there are moments in this where it feels like you are just watching this friend group.
Yeah. The biggest name in this movie, or the most well-known person, is Pruitt, the Zodiac killer.
Yeah.
Carroll something? I forget his name.
Is it like is he a John?
John Carroll Lynch. We were both right. Yeah, he's the
teamwork.
most... Well, him and Toby Huss, who plays the cult leader. He
Yes.
shows up... I love that guy.
Yeah.
He shows up in so many different weird shit.
Yeah.
At playing different characters all the time.
But
Sometimes
John Carroll Lynch is kind of the same the same vibe, where it's like once you know him and you've seen him in something, you spot him in other stuff.
Yeah.
But he's kind of just a guy. Like he's sort of this middle-aged looking dude. He's like balding. He's a little like on the huskier side. He's just like tall
guy.
Just like, but he's just a dude. You're like, he doesn't look like a movie star.
Right.
But he's a great actor.
He's
fucking creepy.
He's really good. It's funny with him because I always, for a long time, I thought, oh, that's Drew Carey's brother from the Drew Carey Show, and then he made Zodiac, and now it's like, oh, it's the Zodiac killer.
Yeah. One of these things is more applicable to this movie than the other.
Yes. There's one other scene, like relationship typey scene that's not overwritten that I really liked. It's a stupid tiny little thing, but it's when Will goes into the bedroom, excuse me, and he finds the barbiturates.
Yeah.
And he's like putting himself back together to walk out, and
David.
Thank you.
Welcome.
David comes walking in and catches him, and I was like, in my head, I'm like, all right, they're gonna have a dialogue scene now, and he like, David. I think it's a very honest reaction where you can see him start to think about saying something, and then he stops and he just goes, why don't you join us back in the other room? Yeah. And I was just so relieved that they didn't have like a talking scene.
Yep. Some
about
like,
shit.
Well, I know this must be hard for you.
Right.
But you have to understand that now that I know that this was your house and that was your wife, but now it's my house and she's my wife, and I need you to respect that.
Right.
Like we could have had a whole big confrontation like that. And instead it's just these two men who just stare at each other for a few beats. And then it's like, why don't we go back? Yeah.
David's a really interesting character because he's incredibly welcoming. Like I guess it makes sense, but he's incredibly welcoming. Like in that scene, there's no sort of confrontation.
Yep.
He demurs to Will for the most part.
Yep.
But at the same time, they have secured the house so that nobody can get out.
Yes.
Nobody can escape.
Yes.
So it's very much like a pulling them into the trap kind of situation.
Yeah.
Even though they might not consider it a trap.
And I think that's you know, there's a lot to unpack in that, where it's like, of course you can afford to be benevolent and patient and welcoming and warm when you know you've already cut off all other contingencies.
Yeah.
And you know that you have a big plan that all these people are unaware of and will not expect.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, it's easy for him to sort of be like, why cause all this drama now? Like, I'm just going to be nice and let it go and get him to come back to the table to have some of my Kool-Aid.
Yeah. He's got like, in retrospect, he's got such like a clear goal.
Yes.
Which is, I just have to get everybody to the point of the evening where they drink the poison wine.
Yep.
And so he's just doing whatever he has to do.
Yep.
To make sure, like, it's not like they're still being kind of weird. Like they're showing him the cult video.
Oh yeah.
They're playing the game, which gets kind of personal to the point where Claire, is that what you said her name was?
The blonde.
The blonde girl.
Yes.
Decides she wants to leave,
yep.
and then most likely gets killed by the Zodiac killer.
Yep.
But like there's a goal for David and Eden, which is, I think, more David than Eden probably.
Yeah.
Which is get everybody to dessert essentially.
Yep.
When we can all kill ourselves. Yeah,
but there's this interesting like there's like two kind of, I mean, there's so many big things I want to talk about with this movie because it's I think one of the movies that we've watched recently that's like heaviest on concept and themes.
Sure.
Like I think a lot of the movies, and this might just be because we've been doing a lot of Friday the 13th coverage.
Yes.
But I feel like several of them...
You mean you don't think that the characters in Friday the 13th Part 8 have the same sort of unspoken, understanding, relatable factor that these ones do?
I mean, probably not. And I also don't think that, you know, the writers and directors were thinking about, like, how do we make a movie that's a complex portrayal of grief and mourning and how different people cope with grief differently. Mm-hmm. And you know, like, you're
just mad that they cut out the scene at the kid's birthday party where Will gives him his birthday present, which is the pen Stephen King used in high school. Or for him,
I thought
for
you were
that
going to
kid,
say Jason's hockey mask.
No, for that kid, it would probably be like the pen R.L. Stein used in high school.
The God, what was the sexton that Stephen King used in high school?
Yes.
No, but there's something so interesting about this movie because I think, like, when you watch it for the first time, you maybe don't see this completely. I know I didn't the first time, but I saw it more this time, which is that, like, David and Eden, the cult couple, as we've been calling them, they think they're doing the right thing.
Right.
And they also think they're doing the right thing, and they think they're doing what's best for the people they love.
Yes. And
so the whole night is kind of structured around, without telling their guests what the plan is, they're clearly trying to give them a last happy night.
Right.
Like, they're trying to make everything nice. They're trying to be really warm and welcoming. They're, you know, they bust out the best wine. They've got all this beautiful food. Even their game, I Want. It's sort of like a last, your you know, what's your last request, you know, your last wish.
Right.
Like, what do you can have anything you want. We're no judgment here. So what do you want? You want to kiss this person? You want to do some coke? You want to tell your truth and, like, tell your story and get it off your chest? Like, everybody gets to have what they want. Everybody gets to have this lovely night with all these people that they love. And then, without knowing it, they are going to, before, you know, they realize that they're going to pass peacefully away. Mm-hmm. And, like, it's so clear when you're rewatching it that the plan the whole time is not about, like, violent murder. It's not about rage. It's not about hatred. It's not like a revenge plot. It's like David especially has the complete faith of a true believer. Like, he's like a pure fanatic with this cult. So he really believes in all of this. He really believes that, like, I'm doing this wonderful thing for these people.
Yeah.
And it makes it all the more creepy because he's so fully committed to his path, and, like, he so completely believes in it. There's no doubt in him. But I do think it becomes interesting when everything goes to shit.
Yeah.
And he and Eden, there's this moment where Will and Kira, I think, overhear him and Eden's crying, and she's saying it was supposed to be beautiful. Like, and I think that's the key to it. Like, they tried to craft this perfect night and have it be beautiful, have it be this beautiful final moment on Earth, this beautiful experience together that they then, you know, they all die together and they're reunited in the beyond kind of deal. And that's not what happens.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because like when you, as far as cults go, it seems very realistic. Well, before we get to that, the other thing I just wanted to say was the thing that makes the unease work so well is I feel like everybody has been in that situation where you think the whole time, all right, why are we really here? Like there's something off about this party. Either someone's going to tell us that they're pregnant or something, or they're going to try and sell us something or have us try to join a cult or whatever. And they balance it really well with everybody's kind of uneasy, but Will is paranoid.
Yes.
And rightfully so, we find out. But they give you this kind of fake out where he feels like he gets the evidence that there's
nefarious goings on.
Yes, he's got a voicemail from Choi. I think it was Choi, right?
Yeah.
Couldn't tell if it was Choi.
Fucking Choi.
Choi or Troy, I couldn't tell.
Don't they say that at one point where they're talking about like, where is he? And everybody's like, is that Choi? Fucking Choi. Yeah, fucking Choi.
Fucking Choi. It's like where he gets a voicemail saying that Choi, he's not at the party, but the voicemail says that he arrived at the house. And so Will freaks out and he's like, where is he? And it seems like this is the point where everything's going to break. And it's like, he's right. Something nefarious is going on. And then Choi shows up.
Right.
And everything turns back around again.
Yes.
And it just kind of sets everything on a spin where at that point, you as an audience member don't know if this is nefarious goings on. I mean, you kind of probably assume there is, but it's tough to tell whether if the story is about this party that turns out to be a bunch of cult people killing people, or if it turns out to be about Will losing his mind. Yeah,
there's definitely, like, the first time you watch this through, there's a moment where you sort of think, like, oh shit, did I misread this whole situation? Is this going to turn into, like, and then Will snaps? Because there's kind of, like, threads throughout the movie that imply that he's not fully present, like, in reality around him. Like, not only is he reminiscing about memories in the house with his son, memories after their son dies with Eden and she tries to slit her wrists at the bathroom, at that kitchen sink, or them in the bathtub. Like, he's getting lost in these sort of reveries, but there's also these cuts where it's like, he'll be like in a room, you know, having a conversation with somebody, and then someone else will call his name and he'll turn his head and he's outside. Right. And it doesn't happen a ton, but it happens enough that it's like, it mimics, I think, what's supposed to be his feeling of like dislocation and disorientation, but it also makes you think like, okay, what's going on with him that he doesn't, like, is he missing time here?
Yeah.
Is he like something's off with him?
And there's that one scene where he's like, it's like silent screaming. And then they do like a hard cut and he's somewhere else, and it's not really sure if, I mean, clearly it's not in his head because nobody's seen him do it, but
right,
or so it is in his head rather.
Yeah, it adds this layer of like, he's definitely the protagonist from the beginning of the movie, and you know right away that he's very unreliable. He's a completely unreliable narrator. If he's sort of the central point of view character, arguably, like, you know, you're missing pieces of the story from him. The thing is, you're also missing pieces of the story from Eden and David. Right, yeah. So, there's enough plausible, like, questioning in there about, like, all right, who's the real crazy person? Right. Is it the weird couple that keeps saying, I love you? Or is it this guy who's, like, grief-stricken and not dealing with it well? Yeah. He's reliable enough to kill a coyote who's been hit by a car, though. So, that's got to be worth something, I guess. Yeah. Points to Will.
Yeah, the protagonist thing is interesting too, because as I was watching this, I was thinking, it's too bad we hadn't watched this in the same kind of ballpark to the point that I could remember it better with You're Next, because they both kind of have similar settings. Except You're Next, the protagonist is the person from the outside who's come in, which is the girlfriend.
Yes.
And in this one, the girlfriend, that character is there. She goes through all the whatnot, but the protagonist is Will, who is part of this group.
Yeah.
And I found it strange because I was thinking, like, Kira, the girlfriend in this, I was like, she's kind of, I don't know, she's a little superfluous to the story. Only because in my head, I'm like, usually you would think she would be the main character. Like, it's the outsider coming. I'm not saying that's how it should have been.
No. I get what you're saying.
But I feel like that's usually because then that becomes your linchpin of your exposition, right?
Right.
You get this person who doesn't know any of these people. It's like,
right.
Oh, so you're a doctor. Yeah.
Oh, so what do you do? Yeah. Lots of like kind of water cooler style talk. Yeah.
And what she does really well in this is she is this sort of like support system for Will, but she doesn't take over everything. So she's there. She's someone. I mean, if you want to get really heady about it, she's like the future. She's his future while he's dealing with his past kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, getting her out of there. Even though she takes control a bit at the end, which is nice. But
no, and it's interesting because this movie also doesn't do the sort of like jealousy subplot you would expect from one side or the other, or both sides, but different. Like, David's not confronting Will saying like, get over it, she's my wife now.
Right. Yep.
Kira's not being like, wow, oh, so your ex-wife, huh? She seems a little crazy, doesn't she? It's a weird cult thing. I'm kind of surprised you were ever married to somebody like her. She seems terrible. Like,
because like that stuff it doesn't really happen in real life, at least not in that. When you're leaving, maybe the next day you have those kinds of conversations. But if you're at that party with those kinds of people, you're not going to say that stuff.
Well, and especially in this kind of situation where, you know, especially I think from like Kira's point of view, she's probably heard all about Eden and their son, and she's probably thinking, I know he needs me to be compassionate and understanding. I know he hasn't seen her in 2 years. I know they divorced because of this tragedy, not because Eden was a bad person. Like, I need to keep my own feelings. I'll go gossip to my friends after this and be like, yeah, she was kind of woo-woo, new age weirdness. Like, I guess, you know, grief changes people in different ways. You never know. But like, you could tell that she was very much there on this mission of like, I'm going to smooth things over. I'm going to support Will. I'm going to try to play nice with his friends who I'm finally getting to meet. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, if they haven't hung out in this long, Kira's probably heard stories about them and like maybe met somebody occasionally, but like, this is probably a big deal for her too, where she's like, I want to make a good impression. Yeah. These people are important to Will. I want them to like me. I want to make this work because I love my boyfriend. Yeah. And I think that's a unique perspective for that kind of character, because I think there is another version of this movie where you're following Kira. Yes. And Kira's the one who's picking up on the weirdness at the party. Kira's the one who's like snooping around, and Will's like, what the hell are you doing? These are my friends. Yeah. You can't be snooping through my ex-wife's dresser. Like, don't be jealous. Yeah. Which they don't do. And I appreciate that they don't go for that easy layup there. Yeah. And I think something that's so interesting and relatable about this movie that we've been kind of talking about, but I'm going to put a more specific point on at least this aspect of it, is that so much of what happens in this movie and so much of the horror of this movie works because the people involved are polite. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Like, it is this sort of bizarro, like Henry James, like a comedy of manners sort of style literature thing. I'm sorry. You made the face at me. I know what that means. I have a face? Yes, you do have a face. You get two eyes and a nose and a mouth and a big beard.
What a relief.
But yeah, it is sort of this like, there's a different version of this movie that is more of like a Jane Austen novel.
Oh, sure.
Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
I think that's a little like more easy to kind of map on to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so much of this is like, and I feel like we've all been there, whether it's like a family event or your friends, you know, oh, my friends got engaged and I have to go to their engagement lunch, and it's like all of their family and all of their friends, and like I don't really know these people, but like I have to be nice even though this seems super weird to me. They're talking about like having to do this, oh, the tradition in our family is we do this weird thing, and you're just like, oh wow, that's a really
it's
nice
called culture, Amanda.
tradition.
Don't make fun of people's cultures.
Always and forever. But like, yeah, like this is so dependent on the fact that everybody feels obligated to go along to get along.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the point where everything, the tough thing about talking about this movie is that it works so well as just like a drama.
Yes.
That I'm probably sure people are like, well, why is this a horror movie? What's
yes.
that? And trust me, it's in there.
Yeah.
Because what we find out, we've mentioned a little bit, is that David and Eden are part of this cult.
Yes.
Who I wanted to talk about the cult a little bit because I feel like the cult feels very realistic. Actually, Meredith, who you might remember from last episode where she gave us the breakdown of the shoes,
our shoe correspondent,
informed us that
cult correspondent.
She's also our cult correspondent. Informed us that the actions that David and Eden are taking throughout the evening line up pretty well with Lifton's theory of thought reform, which is something that
who's the nerd now, Clay?
Yeah, Meredith. Which is a breakdown of the different ways that groups can basically. It sounds like it's a fancy way of saying brainwashing to a certain extent, where it's how to control you, how to get you to the point where they want you to be.
Yeah, like manipulation.
Yeah, which includes milieu control, which is the control of information and communication, mystical manipulation, which is the manipulation of experiences that appear spontaneous but in fact were planned and orchestrated as if the group has a higher purpose, self-sanctification through purity, which is a world viewed as black and white, members constantly pushed to conform to ideology of group and strive for perfection, which creates guilt. Confession, which is sins as defined by the group are to be confessed, creates cognitive dissonance. If words and actions are different, that leads you to change actions and beliefs. The aura of sacred science, which is the group's. That's what I'm going to call my autobiography. Which is the group's ideology is ultimate truth or perfection beyond all questioning or dispute, so follow rules, procedures without question. Loaded language, which includes group interprets or uses words, phrases in new ways, often that the outside world doesn't understand. Control language equals control thought. That comes up a lot in like Scientology, I think, where they use a lot of
jargon and
acronyms, where it's just the letters,
yes,
like RLH and stuff.
Yep.
Doctrine over person, which is group is more important than the individual. Beliefs and experiences, any contrary experiences must be denied and or reinterpreted to fit the ideology of the group. And dispensed existence, which is insiders versus outsiders. Insiders are to be saved. Outsiders are doomed to failure and loss. Constant fear of being cast out. And I think you get a lot of this through the short video that they watch.
Yes.
And what's really fascinating to me about that video is, again, I don't know, maybe they spent time writing a long backstory for what the deal with this cult was, where Toby Huss's character came from, how he started it.
Dr. Joseph.
But like, I was thinking about it and I was like, it seems like the point of this cult is that when you die, it's really nice.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yep.
And like, that's all you need.
Yep. Let's put on our matching tracksuits and Nikes.
Right.
And get the hell out of here.
Because like the character that they create in that video that they show is so well put together that you get all of these theory of thought reform bits coming out of there to see how this cult works. You're seeing how this Dr. Joseph is controlling people. You're seeing this ethos of like we're all going to be together in the afterlife and it's going to be great.
Yes.
And that's the only thing that you need to be the driving point for the story.
Right. You don't need like a whole big, like, here are 13 commandments and 4 additional recommendations for living life. Like, you don't need all of that. Like, here is our doctrine spelled out and our sort of manifest and our mission statement. Like, there's none of that. It's like, and I guess it's probably very much worth talking a little bit about what's in that video.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So thus far we've gotten like Will and Kira come to this party. Everybody's sort of arriving. David and Eden have their like crazy girlfriend Sadie there.
Yes.
And then Pruitt shows up, who's their like, Zodiac killer style friend.
What I did really appreciate about those two characters too is like there's those characters are always in cults. There's one like whacked out girl who's willing to sleep with literally anybody.
Yep.
And there's always one guy who's like the muscle guy.
Well, and the thing I appreciated about this specifically was that they clearly had like no real relationship with each other.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I don't even think they talk to each other.
Yeah, you never see them like interacting. There's none of them like shooting each other looks across the room.
Right.
She like gets excited when he comes. I think she's like, "Oh, you're here," and runs over and hugs him.
Right.
But there's not a lot of like the easy thing would have been like is like Pruitt and is Sadie's partner in life.
Sure.
Like it would have like
we find all about Pruitt's partner in life.
Yes.
And it is a harrowing story.
Yes. But so everybody's sort of arrived and everybody's had some delicious wine and they are settling in and they're kind of mingling and we get a long period of kind of nothing.
Yeah.
We get a lot of like character vignettes and talking and sort of establishing the tone. And then, like David and Eden are like, we really want to show you something.
Right.
Have you heard of The Invitation? And people start kind of being like,
Say
oh,
it right.
No.
Come on.
I will not.
Just once.
Nope.
Thought reform. Come on, do it.
No. Try again. You're a bad cult leader, Clay.
Yeah.
Go back to cult leader school. But so they get everybody to watch this video.
If you do it, though, it's for the benefit of the listeners, which is the group, which is bigger than yourself. We'll get there.
Nope.
We'll get there.
But so they watch this video that has this sort of introduction from Dr. Joseph. And then most of the video is a recording of this woman who's dying of cancer in her final moments. And Dr. Joseph kind of holding her hand while these other people sit around her bedside. And they ask her, how do you feel right now? And she says, I feel loved. And like, are you scared? And she's like, no, I'm at peace. I'm ready to go be with everyone else. Mm-hmm. And it's this very, like, in context, it's like really disturbing because it's clear that like, I think it's well done. I think it's like a fairly realistic portrayal of somebody who is like dying of disease, like struggling for her breath and kind of like fading off. And like it's played in this way where as the video is going and it goes from the introduction into this sequence of this woman dying on camera, the camera that is recording this film pans around the couches to the party goers and gets their reactions. And you see some people clearly trying to sort of like control their expressions and like be like, okay, I don't know what's happening. Let's reserve judgment. Let's try to. And then other people looking totally horrified and shooting these little glances at each other. And then there's a brief moment where you see Eden and she's got this like beatific smile on her face.
Yeah.
And then this woman dies and everybody has the rational reaction of like, why would you show that at a party?
Yeah. I hope that video is available in a full form because I'm going to show it on Saturday when people come over for SummerSlam. I'll be like, before we start, I just want to show you this.
It's Dr. Joseph.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like, I think there are other little moments in this movie where you start to feel like things are going weird beyond just like Will and his grief. And that's the moment where you're really like, oh, okay, they are actually in a cult. Like these two are not just like weird, eccentric people who've been like doing too much like, you know, vinyasa yoga and Reiki like stuff. They're like,
they're not getting vaccines, I can tell you that.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, that video shifts the tone in a way that I think is really interesting. Yeah, and then Claire leaves, and it's like from there on you kind of start getting this vibe of like what's really going on here.
Yeah, the noose starts tightening from that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's nice about the cult is that it is a very realistic, at least I mean from what
all the cults that you've run.
Well, I'm thinking specifically. I watched that HBO documentary on NXIVM.
Oh Jesus!
And it feels a lot like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like on the surface, it's kind of benign.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a self-help program. It's the leader is a very unimpressive, doofy-looking white guy.
Yeah. Well, have you ever watched any of the Marshall Applewhite
very few
videos? Like those are those feel a little sillier because they've got this kind of like 70s sci-fi vibe to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of the same thing where it's just this like kind of like, I don't know, kind of dorky looking white dude over a certain age who's just like, would you like to come to a plane of existence that's peaceful? Come join us. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, when I was watching that NXIVM documentary.
Yeah.
Did you watch any of it?
I did, yeah.
The whole time, every time they showed this guy, especially when they showed him all decked out to play volleyball.
I was going to say in his little sweatband,
yeah,
little shorts.
I kept going,
him?
This fucking guy?
Yeah.
Like, why are these people, you know, nobody was killing themselves, thankfully. I mean, it wasn't great, but it didn't get to that point. Not that the point it got to was any better. Well, it was better than dying, I guess. But
yeah.
But there's so many people that are devoted to this guy.
Yeah.
For reasons I cannot figure out.
Yeah.
And it is all. It felt very much like the video in this movie.
Yes.
Where it's this idea of kind of thought control, where it's like if you can reframe things for people in a way that is helpful, even if they don't realize it is destructive.
Yes.
Then you can go a long way with that.
Well, yeah, and this guy's clearly preying on people who've suffered intense loss.
Yeah. The fact that he's a doctor is great, too.
I mean,
that's just
is he a doctor? That's the question.
It doesn't like the fact that that's in his name.
Right,
is
yes.
Very, very good detail.
But he's preying on like a very vulnerable population,
sure.
which is why he can get away with a lot of what he gets away with, I think.
Yeah, and I think it works better than if they had gone the other direction and had it been like a capital C cult where it's, you know, robes and shit, or like
yeah
like
and
if
now
it had
we'll go
into
down to the basement for the ritual.
Like if the end of this had been the end of like House of the Devil,
I was
don't
just
think
thinking
it would
that.
be like, nearly as effective. I think it's the terror of it comes out of how mundane it is.
Yeah, like there's this moment once so when things really start going nuts is like everybody's had dinner, Will's had his freak out, and everybody's gotten kind of mad at him or deeply uncomfortable. And then they get him back to the table. Everybody seems like it's settling in, and they start passing out the like dessert wine. You know, they're like pouring it out and from this like decanter.
Never trust a decanter.
Never trust a decanter. And in the midst of all of this, like Gina takes a sip of hers and Will freaks out again and starts smashing all the glasses, and he's causing such a disruption that people are dropping things and everybody's, you know, all over the place. And Sadie screams at him, "You ruined it." Right, yeah. And she attacks him, which causes more chaos. Then they turn and they realize, like, oh, Gina's not breathing. Gina's on the ground foaming at the mouth.
Well, you think, again, they give you a bit of a nice little twist where you think for a second that the turn is going to come when Sadie, when Will throws her off of him and she whacks her head and it looks like she's dead. Yeah. But that's kind of a misdirect to get you off kilter for when they turn back and Gina's foaming at the mouth dead on the table. Yes.
And from there, it's like, David, who pulls out the gun?
So that's the one thing I would change.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this afterwards and I was like, I feel like Pruitt should be the first person to start opening fire, because it's David. David gets the gun and goes over and shoots Miguel.
Yes.
It feels to me like Pruitt should be the one to get that going. Like the reason he's there is to make sure nobody leaves.
See, I actually I agree with you. I agree that's what Pruitt's purpose is. But I like that they have David do it because he does it and then he looks horrified.
That's true. Good point.
He's clearly he's a fanatic, so he's going to do this, but he's clearly not by his nature a violent person. And so there is this moment where you almost maybe think this act of violence has kind of jarred him out of it.
Sure.
Like it's kind of made him go, oh, fuck, what am I doing? But Pruitt's there. And Pruitt, as we hear from his horrible story of his wife.
I did forget one of the party fouls should be responding to a question about you by giving a in-depth explanation of how you killed your wife while you were drunk and went to jail for a while.
Right, but you forgive yourself.
Yes, yeah.
Which, I mean, good for you, bro.
That's all that matters, right?
Yeah. You feel good about it.
You feel good about
it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Pruitt's kind of there to just be like, all right, we're fucking doing this. And he takes the gun from David because David's so rattled by killing somebody. And then doesn't he just turn and shoot Choi or somebody?
Yes.
Immediately, he's just all right, you can tell Pruitt is going to methodically go through each person in this party until everyone's dead.
Yeah. And I was just, as we were talking about it, I realized why it's important for David to do it.
Yeah.
Because if what happens is Sadie yells, "You ruined it," and then Pruitt is the first one to shoot, then that makes it seem like it's the outsiders who are doing it,
right?
When it needs to be David and or Eden who are
because it's their house, it's their plan, it's clearly their vision of how they wanted this to go was everybody drinks their wine and dies together.
Yeah.
But there's a moment when this sort of sequence in the dining room sets off the dominoes of now everybody is scattering and running away, and Pruitt, Sadie, Eden, and David are the cult members who are going after everyone else at this party to kill them. And the doors are locked. There are bars on the window. Will has some advantage because this used to be his house. So he knows the layout. Yep. He's kind of better able to navigate away. But he takes Kira and he kind of says to her, remember, they're just people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's this great moment where he's saying it to try to calm her down, to sort of say, we can get through this, we can survive this. But I think it also emphasizes the horror of this movie, which is that, they are just people. They're not monsters. Right. They're not, supernatural entities. Nobody's possessed. They're people and they're choosing to do this.
Right, yeah.
Which is scarier in some ways than some outside force because... especially for Will, these are people he loves. He loved Eden, so it's having her do this to him is not only a betrayal but a huge shock.
Right. Yeah. And that final sequence is, I think, really effective because it goes from 0 to 100 so quickly.
Yeah, really quickly.
Yeah, and there are so many people, and they scatter.
Yeah.
So. A few of them are gone immediately, but then the rest of them, I forgot that Miguel's boyfriend was still out there.
Yeah.
Because he gets, I think Eden slashes him across the stomach.
Yep.
And he goes down. So I just assumed that he was dead, but then he shows up a little bit later to kind of save the day a little bit.
And because of the layout of the house, you sort of get, even as Will is kind of running and hiding, you sort of see through doorways and windows these framed kind of vignettes of the other party guests getting murdered.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that they do really well too is you get a little bit of it at the end from David right before he kind of gets killed, but they kind of avoid too much bad guy monologuing.
Yeah, there's not a lot of proselytizing in this.
Yeah, there's a little bit right at the end, but it's not
which
offensive.
From him I do think makes sense because I've been saying, he's a true believer, you know, he's fully indoctrinated in this cult. It would make some sense that he's kind of saying no, you don't understand.
Yeah. But he also never, unless I'm misremembering, he never loses his cool. It's all pretty fairly down the middle, right?
Yeah,
he's no, this is just what needs to happen. He's not screaming and freaking out.
Exactly. Yeah, he's never. This is
Eden
not
does
about
that a bit, but
Yeah, but for her, it's clearly like more complicated. Whereas like I was saying, it's not about anger. It's not about revenge. This isn't a Your Next story,
right.
Where it's like, I fucking hate my family,
right?
And if I get them and I kill all of them, not only do I never have to deal with them again, I get all the money,
right?
Like you're not dealing with any of that. It's not about greed. It's not about hatred. It's just like, oh no, this is the right thing to do. This is what we all need to do now. And you don't understand. We tried to get you to understand by getting you to watch the video, and you didn't understand, but that's fine. You'll see after we die that this is the right thing that we needed to do.
Yeah. And it's really sad, I think, when Eden shoots herself.
Yes.
First of all, because she shoots herself in a very inconvenient place that's going to take a long time to die.
Yeah.
I was just reading about. I was listening to last podcast on the left. They were talking about Billy the Kid.
Oh.
And they talked for a little bit about how getting shot in the stomach in the 1800s was probably one of the worst ways you could die.
Yeah.
But it's really sad for her, because what you really get out of her at the end there is that all she wanted is to see her son again.
Yeah.
And she believes that whatever the afterlife brings, she will be reunited with her son.
Yep.
And that she wants everybody else she loves to be there with her.
Yes.
And it's not even that she's sad that this didn't, that it's not like there's no breaking of the illusion for her. She's just,
right.
She's just sad that it's not going to happen.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. It's like her grief is just so fresh and it's still there.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because there's a moment where Will says, I think Will says it to Kira when he's talking about it, the son's accident.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I've been waiting to die since that day.
Yeah. That's how I feel every time I drop a bagel, cream cheese side down on the floor.
You're just waiting to die.
It actually happened to me today, because I went out. It was pouring out rain, and I wanted bagels. So I went down the street, got a bag of bagels.
Yes.
And they put them in a paper bag.
Oh no.
It was raining.
Yeah, we had like tornado warnings and shit. Yeah.
And 5 feet from my stairs, the paper bag ripped through because of the rain.
Oh no.
And the bagels, which were in a plastic bag,
yes,
fell onto the street. And I was like, oh, plastic bag, no big deal. Only when I brought them in did I discover that the plastic bag was not waterproof. And so there was street water in there with the bagels.
Oh, no.
And at that point, ever since that point, I've just wanted to die.
A similar thing happened a few weeks back to my husband. We were at a brewery, and he got like a bratwurst, like on a big sausage on a roll. And he was so excited, and he started to take a bite, and the whole thing came out of the roll and fell directly onto the brewery floor.
Yeah.
And I think he's been waiting for the rapture ever since.
Yeah. Well, I have a group that he might want to join if he accepts the invitation to do so.
I just laughed so hard I woke your dog up.
But yeah, I think it's extra scary because Pruitt is just stone-faced the whole time. Like he gets emotional like when he tells the story about his wife.
But even then, it's like not normal emotions.
Yeah, it's the same kind of emotion Eden has, where it's like she's happy about what's happening here.
Yes.
And when everything starts going crazy, Pruitt is just stone cold.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's not like a monster is really effective. There's the scene when Kira takes him out by beating him to death with the wine bottle.
So good.
It's really fucking creepy because like he just keeps getting up and kind of screaming in sort of an inhuman way before she takes him out.
Yeah, but it is like a sort of like, if you've ever wondered what those scenes with like Michael Myers or Jason would be like with a real person, where somebody knocks them down and they keep getting up, that's like what you get in this movie.
Yeah. But yeah, the ending of this is this reveal. At a certain point in the movie, David goes out and he lights this red lantern.
Yes, in the yard.
Yes, and he in the yard, and he hangs it in the yard. And after they've taken everybody out, it's Will, Kira, and Miguel's boyfriend
Ben.
Sure.
I think.
They have survived, and they're out in the backyard, which overlooks like the Hollywood Hills or whatever.
Yeah, this is a super wealthy neighborhood.
Yeah. It's well, they look around and they see all of these red lanterns peppered among the hills.
Yep.
And then you start hearing helicopters and police cars, screams, gunshots.
Yep.
And it's this idea that this is like happening many places, and this was a very what's the word I'm looking for? Orchestrated, coordinated thing.
Yeah.
And they don't explain it. It's kind of a cute, funny ending when you think about how many of those red lanterns are in like the Hollywood Hills, and it's like, yeah, of course that's where they'd all be in LA.
But you know what? I think it's pretty great because there's the moment when I think it's around the time they show the video during the party, and they ask, what do you know about the invitation, or like, can you tell us about like what do you guys actually do, and like blah blah blah, and they're talking about the cult. And a lot of people in the group are being like, oh, no, I mean, my boss is super into it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like a fringe thing. Like, there's all these people who are like, oh, yeah, my aunt really likes it. My boss is into it. Like, oh, yeah, my girlfriend's roommate is, always doing, the invitation stuff. Like,
right.
It's really pervasive. It's sort of like, and I say this as somebody who does Peloton, but it's sort of like the Peloton thing where, like, all of a sudden everybody does it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like you could ask even a bunch of like our friends, like, have you ever done this? And several of them would be like, yeah. And you're just like, wait, since when? Why do you have that t-shirt? Like, yeah. Yeah. Where it's just like, it's this thing that like highly, it's like highly motivated, usually pretty educated, usually well off, like upper middle class people are getting super into this cult. And it probably just seems like you were saying, like a self-improvement sort of thing. And it's so pervasive that it's dangerous.
Yeah, I kind of felt like it hit a little bit differently watching it this time, just because like I'm not going to go into any specifics about the current time we're living in.
Yes.
But the moment where they step outside and see how widespread this thing is, it's the moment where you realize, oh crap, this is something a lot of people believe.
Yes.
It's let's just say it's a relatable feeling.
Yes. Yeah. Well, like, so when we were watching this, my husband was watching this with me, and this was his first time seeing it. Mm-hmm. And we were getting to the end, and our three survivors were outside in the backyard, and Greg said, I mean, I liked this movie. This was a really good movie, but I don't understand why it's a horror movie. To me, this is a thriller.
Sure.
Like,
okay. Interesting.
I feel like this should be more of like a thriller. And I was kind of like, well, because I didn't want to say anything. Mm-hmm. And then they all turn and they look and they see all the red lanterns. And he goes, oh.
Interesting.
I get why it's a horror movie now.
Interesting.
Like, that is what it took for him to see it as a horror movie rather than just a thriller about these crazy cult people.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I guess that would lead us into the the last bit, which is its placement on the list.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It is, what did I say? 117.
Uh-huh.
Do you feel like that's deserved? Should it be higher? Should it be lower? Should it be removed?
So I think it should be on the list.
Mm-hmm. 117, higher than The Shining.
See, that's where I keep running into trouble.
Yeah.
And higher than like the Thing, right?
Oh, yes, I believe so, yeah.
So it's like, I don't know if I first watched this, if this would smack of horror movie right away to me.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, some of our listeners maybe, probably Wes, would say that this is not a horror movie.
You know, I don't know, because we've talked about that a bit on our Discord.
Yeah.
And Wes's definition has been like, if there's a supernatural element, then that would make it horror.
Yes.
But he doesn't explicitly mean supernatural like ghosts. It's just like the more kind of general idea of supernatural.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could put the cult aspect in that box.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would have to ask him.
Sure. I didn't mean to ascribe a very specific opinion to him. I more meant that like I could see him either making or understanding the argument for why it's not a horror movie.
Yeah, I would be interested to know where he fell in that, because I think you're right. I think this could go either way for him. Yeah.
Yeah. That being said, I do think it's a horror movie. I do think it should be on the list. I don't think it should be 117. I like this movie a lot. I think it has a lot to recommend it. I think it's a great scary movie to watch if you have people in your life who like kind of thrillers but don't like horror movies, like aren't interested in monsters or jump scares. This is a good kind of way to watch a horror movie with non-horror fans.
Right.
I think the acting's really good. I think the writing is great. I think the pacing is pretty good.
It's gorgeous.
It's a beautiful movie.
I was getting actively upset.
Yeah, you were getting mad at the Amazon stream version.
Like, I am always going to go to bat for physical media because I think the quality is always better. Whether it's, if you believe that about vinyl, sure, but vinyl CDs almost always better quality than streaming audio.
Yeah.
And with video too, having it on disc like a Blu-ray is always going to look better.
Yeah.
Than the stream that you're getting.
Yes.
And I don't know exactly how it was showing up on you guys' TV, but
we have a $300 TV from Walmart that we bought 8 years ago. So
who's to say?
Yeah.
But like this movie's really dark. Like the light in this movie is very soft in a lot of places. There's a lot of darkness. There's a lot of color, but it's not bright color.
Yes.
And in some places it is, but not.
Yeah,
not
yeah.
A lot
No, I agree. There's
you
a
get
lot of neutral tones.
Yeah, and when they go outside, you're getting a lot of the lights from the city and stuff.
Sure.
It was breaking up so fucking
really?
much. Like every time that it got dark, and it wasn't like there was a problem. It wasn't bad enough that it seemed like there was a problem. It just seemed like the quality of the stream
just wasn't there.
Yeah. Remember? Were you watching Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Remember when everybody complained about that episode of Game of Thrones because it was too dark?
Yep.
It was that kind of thing where it's like the stream and the TV was compressed so much that it just couldn't handle.
Got it.
And so like you had those like waves of pixels you could see in the blackness and stuff. And it was really bumming me out because it's a gorgeous movie.
Yes.
It's so nicely shot.
Yes.
And I'm looking at it, I'm like, this looks like a fucking YouTube video. And it was really, really making me sad.
Dr. Joseph directed it.
Yeah, I might actually go. I might try to buy this because like it.
Yeah.
Just out of spite.
Just out of spite. It's a lot of things you can get done out of spite.
Yeah, it's a very, very effective motivator.
Yeah.
Megadeth, the entire career of Megadeth based on spite.
Fair. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. But I would put this probably somewhere between 150 and 200.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's a really wide range, but again, I think part of my problem is that it's like, I like this movie. I think it's a great movie. I think a lot of people would argue it's not a horror movie, even though I do. So I could understand if somebody wanted to put it lower, versus higher.
Yeah, I would wonder where you draw the line with thriller because I feel that's a conversation for another time.
We've gone long already.
Yeah, I think it would stay. I would do the same. I would say probably 150 or lower, or towards 200.
Yeah.
But great movie. Karen Kusama hasn't made a ton of movies. She did the most recent one she did was she's done a lot of TV since this. But the last movie she made was called Destroyer.
Oh, yeah.
With Nicole Kidman.
I do want to see this.
I did want to see that as well. And now that I know she directed it, I want to see it that much more. So I'm going to have to check that one out.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's a great director.
Absolutely.
They managed to do something I think really unique in this. And it's if you are looking for like a flashy horror movie, this is not it.
Yeah.
But if you're in for the kind of slower burn,
yes,
the ball starts rolling kind of stuff, this one is very good.
Yeah, agree.
So yeah, I think that's going to do it for The Invitation. I think I missed it. I think I said it once before.
I think you did, and I was hoping you didn't notice.
I hit the randomizer button, beep boop boop beep beep boop boop beep boop. And I got to tell you, I'm a little bummed out because
oh, no.
We're going to be doing number 190, which is Phantasm, which
I
really don't like this movie.
I am not familiar with this one.
Okay, good. I'm looking forward to this. I'm not going to try and I won't say anything else about it. I don't want to color your perception of it.
Okay.
But this is definitely one that falls into the 3 strikes rule for me.
Oh, wow.
I think I've I think I've only seen it twice, so this will be an interesting third
so
try.
we're back in like an American Werewolf situation.
Yeah, I will try to go in with an open mind, but I really dislike this movie.
Okay.
And I know it's a favorite of a lot of people.
All right.
But I think it sucks. But
well, I am excited to experience it and talk to you about it.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys for listening. If you want to support the show, you can do that on Patreon at patreon.com/thepenskyfile, where, excuse me.
Dun, dun, dun.
Where Amanda and I have been covering the Friday the 13th series, one movie a month this year. August brought us to Part 8, which is Jason Takes Manhattan, which is the end of the classic Paramount series. In September, we will be doing Jason Goes to Hell.
Oh, boy.
Things start to get weird. So if you want to join us over there, that would be great.
Come join us in hell.
Yes. Thank you guys for listening. Tell your friend. I don't know what the best way to tell people to tell your friends. Give them an invitation.
Invite your friends
to listen to this show. Anyway, thanks guys. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.